Removing yourself from shit that repeatedly triggers your mental health and hurts your heart is top tier self-care. Posted on Instagram by golden_vibes. Hello everybody and welcome to Tuesday's episode of the Toy Talks podcast. If you don't know already, if you can't recognise my voice, allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is Toy Washington. I am the creator, host and founder of the Toy Talks podcast and platform, and every single Tuesday we have a brand new episode of the Toy Talks podcast, and today is Tuesday, so you get a brand new episode. How are you all doing? Welcome. I am currently wrestling with period pains. And this is a bit of TMI, but the constipation during our menstrual cycle is very crazy. You know them ones where you have to strip off because you are just hot, because you are just, if you're anything like me, I also give birth to blood clots. It's just a lot. And as women, we just go through so much. This is what I don't understand. You know when a man has like a cold and a cough and they act like it's the end of the world? I'm thinking, how would men have coped if they had to have periods? Like, really, how would they have coped? I am a clean freak anyway, and I'm showering like 3 times a day because I'm on period. Like, I just can't, and my periods are heavy, and I do talk about periods and stuff, and heavy periods in a YouTube video that I did not too long ago, so if you want to have a bit of a watch of that, see that was like a nice little segue to a nice plug of my YouTube channel, which is At Home with Toya. The link is in the show notes that are accompanying this podcast episode. So this episode I've entitled The Good Person Syndrome, and we're going to get into it. But before we do, you know how we do, we have to talk about a couple of things before we get into the meat and potatoes of the podcast. I don't know if you guys have been under a rock. For those of you who have not watched on Netflix, Young, Famous and African. I was about to say Young, Rich and African. Honey, that's what it should have been called. Okay? Young, Rich, Famous and African. That's what it should have been called. But no, on Netflix it's called Young, Famous and African. And basically it charters like a couple of very well known, very influential, very famous, very rich African influencers, not just Nigerian, South African influencers too, but in particular I want to talk about 3 of them: Annie, Zari and Swanky Jerry. Annie is very problematic, and I'm just going to explain why. Your rhetoric, and it's a rhetoric, yeah, when a woman decides that she is going to stay with a man that cheats on her, has evidence of the cheating by having babies outside of your relationship, and you want to be in a relationship with that man, it is your responsibility to deal with the fallout of insecurities, paranoia, and all the disrespect that comes with it. Because there are going to be women that are going to try you, because since your man has stepped out in your marriage, or allegedly, or in your relationship, women are going to try you because they're going to want to know, number one, why are you staying with him, and number two, I feel like if you don't hold yourself out to in a certain way, people are going to disrespect you. I always say, if a man cheats on a woman, he's disrespecting the woman that he is with. Do you understand? And the disrespect is not just the act of cheating, it's also everything that comes with it. And I never look down my nose on anyone who stays with a man or a woman, or that cheats on them. That's your choice. But what I do have a problem with is when you stay with a man, you know he's cheating on you, he's had kids, there's evidence of it, you can't hide it. And then you want to start recounting the story of how you knew him first. Knowing him first is irrelevant. You knew him first and he still went and had kids with other people. So we need to just get past that. And I think that Annie is carrying a lot of pain and a lot of hurt because of the treatment that she's received in her marriage from his family. Because I'm a Nigerian Igbo babe, so we've been knowing about Annie and Two-Face Adibia for years, and their families, their extended families are in their business, and there's always a passer, and what it boils down to is respect. And I just don't think Annie is respected within her family. I don't think her husband respects her. I think he's trying to overcompensate for the fact that he has stepped out numerous times. He has disrespected his marriage. And we watched them during the Netflix series. They renew their wedding vows. And my thing is, I get why people renew their wedding vows. I have no issue with that. But I don't get how you can renew your vows on the backdrop of severe and chronic cheating that has also resulted in children. Because I feel like if those vows meant anything in the beginning, you would have never done that. So renewing them, is that just like an upgrade? You know, like after your phone contract runs out and then you upgrade, you renew it again. So is that like a new lease of life for bullshit? I don't understand. Maybe I'm being harsh, I don't know. But me, I don't really understand that. For me, cheating is a strict liability offence, yeah? Because for me, it's not just the cheating, it's not just the act of cheating. It's the disrespect. It is the insecurity and the introspection that I have to then go through and deliver myself from. And I already don't trust people. So that just takes me back years and years. And it will then transcend into every relationship that I have. Because trust to me is so important. And I say to Kay all the time, I'd rather we just separate than you cheat. Because at least if we separate, you give me the dignity of understanding that you don't want to be with me anymore. When you cheat and tell me you still want to be with me, then that means I'm not enough. And this is how I view things, right? I don't judge anyone for staying with somebody if they cheat on you, but you have to understand the parameters in which you're going to exist in that relationship. And I think Annie is delusional. And I think that she needs to recognise that there is a lot of work that she has to do if she's going to stay in a marriage with this man. And part of me I'm curious to understand why she would stay with him if it's not just for the mullah. Because I know she was like an actress and all of this. But let's really be honest. A lot of us only know Annie because she's married to Two-Face the DBL. Let's really be real. And when I look at Two-Face, I'm sorry, it must be a personality thing because I've met Two-Face before. And first of all, he's an amazing musician. He's a legend. But struggling to personality like a dishwater. Sorry, I just don't get it. But it's not for me to get, right? Because clearly Annie saw something in him. That's why she agreed to marry him, or he agreed to marry her, or whatever the situation was. But I feel like with Annie, it's really sad to watch her kind of almost disintegrate in the shame of the disrespect that she's encountered. You can tell that she's just in so much pain. And it's the type of pain that you know is going to take years and years and years of therapy, because there's a level of truth that she needs to get to that I just don't think she ever will. And one thing is for sure, you can tell that Annie loves Two-Face. You can see that. But I wonder what that love is based on. Like, how do you renew the love when somebody's cheated on you numerous times, had kids on you numerous times? I think she said her kids are number 5 and number 6. And I'm just like, girl. And then you've got all these, you know, mothers of his kids that she has to deal with, and it's just a passer. So that's Annie. Can we talk about Zari? Zari is problematic, and let me tell you why Zari is problematic. Because she has no self-respect. Irrespective of what's happening with Annie and her husband or whatever the issue is, it is always going to be disrespectful for a woman to go to a man in front of his wife or his girlfriend or his fiance or his whatever and say, can I talk to you please? In front of his partner, to talk about his partner to the man. Zari is so disrespectful, and this is the reason why I feel as though Zari, until she understands girl code, she's going to be an Annie one day. That's how I look at it. I think also Zari needs to understand, like for me, it's the equivalent of somebody coming to, like, I'm out somewhere and going to Kay and say, Kay, do you mind if I talk to you please? In front of me. Then you go with Kay to have a conversation about me being an insecure woman. I'm sorry. Hello. We thank God for education. We thank God for growth. But there is a ghetto girl that lives inside of me that will drag your ass. Like, what is that? What in the disrespect is that? And this is the problem. I feel like there's some people that don't know their place. Just in life, they don't know their place. There should be no reason you're calling my man to have a chat. That's period poo 1. And there is no way you should be talking to my man about me. Are you alright? And this is what I'm saying. I have a problem with Annie. Are you so disrespected just generally that people feel like they can even come around you and say, can I speak to your husband in front of you? You should be going together. Or I would say to the woman, whatever you need to speak about, why can't you do it in front of me? I would have called that shit out. We're not doing side chats. And as she was walking off to have the chat, her bum was moving from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock. Me, I don't understand. What's all that? I just feel, you know what? I kind of feel like Zari's a homewrecker in training. Sorry, but I do. And this whole relationship with Diamond, I don't get it. I don't, or the lack thereof. And then she's there. I just don't understand Zari. Beautiful woman, but I just feel like she's ugly inside. There's something about her that I just don't like. Now, the star of the show is Swanky Jerry. And if you follow Nigerian influencers, then you will know he is a stylist, he is an icon, he is everything. Swanky Jerry's really had his moment. Like, he's been around for years in terms of like the industry and stuff, but I love the fact that he has really been propelled into like the limelight, because he's giving brand, he's giving elegance, he's giving like chic, he is giving fashion, darling. And I love everything about him. I think he's amazing. Swanky Jerry looks Igbo, like, you know, I'm an Igbo babe. Igbo men have a certain head shape, and he has that head shape. He has this Igbotic thing about him. So I definitely believe that he's Igbo. And I think I read somewhere as well that he's Igbo, that confirms it for me. But he's an Igbo guy. Dress is wicked, personality top tier. He is a vibe, and he's loyal to Annie. And I like the way he kind of protects Annie, because I think he can see where her Achilles heel is, and I definitely feel like he covers her in love. And it was actually quite nice to see, because there's many vulnerable moments that Annie had, and I think she just needed loyalty in a way that she has never had before, and I feel like she got that from Swanky Jerry. He never threw her under the bus, he always covered her, had her back, and I'm sure behind closed doors he's talking to her, but we don't need to see that. And that's how friendship is. Like, this is what I call real friendship. For me, I will go hard for my friends. I'm a Libran. I am a loyal Libran. But when we are outside, we are united front. I got your back, you got my back. Like I'm there. But behind closed doors, I will drag my friends, and I expect them to drag me too. But when we're out in public, oh honey, we like 5 and 6, and that's how it should be. So it's really nice to see Swanky Jerry like that with Annie. Moving on. Can we talk about Krept from the duo Krept and Conan, and the mother of his daughter, Sasha? So I'm sure a lot of you must have seen, like, on social media, like Shade Brother. So Sasha had posted on, I believe it was Snapchat, and she was just basically, you know, just like an ordinary post, and she was talking about how she pays £700 towards her daughter's nursery fees. And she said a couple of other things, and it just literally went viral. And the narrative is that why should she be paying half of the money for her daughter's nursery when the father of her daughter is a millionaire? And everyone was giving their opinion. And I think the thing that made me sick about that whole thing is a Twitter space was open. There was over 1,000 people in there talking about this. And Krept actually went on the Twitter space, and he was very calm and everything. But how is it that people feel so entitled to have an opinion, but these times you haven't even paid your electricity bill? You have so much of an opinion of what he should be doing as a father. You're questioning that young baby is made for life, but you're questioning as to why the mother of his daughter pays anything because he's a millionaire. And he come on there and he was like, listen, my child's set up for life. And the bit that I feel like people ignored is that Sasha came back afterwards, you know, after people kind of leaving comments and saying whatever, and she was like, listen, he's basically given me, like, he's helped me in exposing me to a life where I can not only stand on my own 2 feet, but she can independently provide for her own child. And I feel like that was probably, for me, the most important thing that she said. It was so beautiful. It's the view that, yes, you know, they were together, they made a beautiful daughter, he is a millionaire, and she is a social media influencer, and she stands on her own 2 feet. And of course, he used his connects and influences to, you know, open a few doors for her, but she ran through them, and she's made a name for herself. And ultimately, she credits Krept in doing that for her. And for me, I think it's beautiful, because what that means is, if Krept is smart, he's patterned the mother of his daughter, so that push comes to shove, not only does she have a career, she's able to stand on her own 2 feet and provide for their daughter together. Do you understand? Isn't that what relationships are about? I mean, we had the episode last week, The Business of Marriage. And whilst I know Krept and Sasha aren't married, but it's the business of relationships in terms of ensuring that you not only are invested in your partner, but vice versa. And ultimately, it's about achieving the epicenter of your excellence. And I don't see any issue in anything that Sasha said. What I did find disgusting is the people come in there to give their opinion, all this, why is he doing this? And he's a millionaire and la 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 la. These times, people's microwaves have not been cleaned and washed. These times, these people haven't brushed their teeth before they went to bed. These times, people are talking about, oh, he should make sure he's paid for his daughter. Oh, it's just something about, there was one girl, she was like, as a minimum, he should be doing this. Who are you to come and tell him what he should be doing for his child as a minimum? These times, your socks have holes in them and you refuse to replace them. I don't understand. I don't understand how people feel so entitled to go on a public platform and basically try to drag this man because the mother of his child pays half of the money for the nursery fees. Why do you think you get to tell people how their financial setup should look like? And these times you're in your overdraft. These times you can't even take out a credit card. These times you haven't even done any financial planning. You have no financial awareness, but you're telling people how to live their lives. But you completely ignore the fact that Krept basically created a family life whereby, even though he's not with the mother of his child, the mother of his child is patterned and is thriving. Why can't we look at the beauty of what that actually looks like and the essence of what that co-parenting look like? Why can't we have that conversation? But instead, what happens is you've got judge, jury and executor here who don't know either of them, don't know their circumstances, takes everything out of context and is facilitating bullshit in a conversation that makes no sense. I would have rather, if you're going to have an opinion, fine, have an opinion, but keep it respectful. Why everybody stays in every other person's pockets, I will never understand. These times your pockets has holes you can't even catch, not even a coin. Some people just need to face their front and just face your front. I don't understand. I will go on record to say this. As a minimum, you bring a child into this world, you look after your child. However, this man is not only looking after his child, she's probably got trust funds and everything. He's made sure that the mother of his child is also able to stand on her own 2 feet and rely solely on herself. And she's happy. Every time you see a picture of their daughter or you see anything, the child is happy. That's a happy co-parenting, healthy relationship. Let's have that conversation. Let's talk about how to co-parent healthily. Teach us, let us learn. Rather than dragging people down because you're inside other people's pockets but your own. These times you're quivering, asking your boss for a pay rise, but you're coming to tell Krept how he should be financially spending his money. Get out of here. Since we're going to get into it before we actually enter the episode, can we talk about Kojo the comedian, please? Yeah, let's talk about him very briefly because... So, I was in Shade Borough and Kojo, they had like a screen record or whatever of Kojo effectively saying that, and I'm paraphrasing here, about who pays on the third date. Not the second or the first, the third date. And effectively, if the woman doesn't pay for the third date, he looks at her sideways and effectively they probably won't get to a fourth date. And he started going on and on, talking. And I couldn't... Do you know what I was shocked at? Because he's talking about, you know, that... do you know what I was surprised at? At his big age, at everybody's big age, we're still talking about who pays for the third date or who pays for the date. Is that where dating is? Like, still. And at his big age, because he's not a young buck here, he's a grown-ass man. I think to myself, you're in a position of influence, yeah? And rightly or wrongly, people listen to him. Or at least give him audience to hear the first 5 seconds of what he has to say. And you're talking about paying on the third date. And then he kept licking his lips. So I'm thinking, if you're struggling with the third date, who's going to pay for the chapstick? Because the way he was licking his lip with a saliva, no grease, I don't understand. Let me just say this here, because I've had an episode where I'm speaking about dating and stuff, and I think there's so many more topics to explore in relation to that, because we work hard, women, my fellow sisters, my black queens, we work hard. So we need to talk about the world of work and life, because let's be honest, we spend more time at work than we do anywhere else, but equally we work hard so that we can play hard, right? So we can get into that in maybe in another episode, but I'm gonna go on record, I'm gonna say this. If he or she asks you out, they should pay. But I tell you, like my dad told me, always walk with your money. My friend calls it vex money. Always walk with your money. Because just because the person acts like their brain is together, sometimes a lot of these people act like they're a couple of screws loose and the screws short of a full toolkit. Some of them ain't okay. And in knowing that, you can't leave yourself vulnerable. As far as I'm concerned, and the right thing to do, if a woman or a man or whoever asks whoever out on a date, the person who asks should pay. This 50-50 culture at the dating stage is a problem for me. It's a problem because I feel as though, at least on a few dates, stop being cheap. If you're broke, don't date. When I was broke, I wasn't dating. You understand? What I was doing when I was broke is there was a couple of people that liked me. If I was hungry, I'll call one of them. They're going to take me to eat. I was like, listen, I'm a Niger babe. And when I was younger, I just had no fucks. I just didn't give a shit. Okay? But I'm telling you right now, if you are broke, do not date. Because if you're still talking about who pays for what on the third date, you're broke and you shouldn't be dating. Broke people should not be going on dates. You shouldn't be on Tinder trying to procure the time of somebody. Okay? I feel like when you start hearing men talk the way Kojo talks, it's not just a red flag, it's a red siren. Run. Because my thing is, if you're going now to talk about who pays on the third date and you'll look at a woman differently if she doesn't pay this, that and the third, what is your intention when you're dating? Isn't the intent that, for me, the intention of dating is trying to decide what qualities you would like in the person you would eventually end up with. One of my friends, she's a serial dater. She's not interested in a relationship. She just likes going on dates. So her intention is to go on dates and have fun. And I said to her, until you meet the right person, because you're going to meet that one person that's going to stop you wanting to go on any other dates. And she said, yeah, maybe, but I ain't met him yet. And when I say have fun, she'll go on record, she'll say, Toya, I don't have sex with any of these guys. What I do is I have eye sex with them. I have conversation sex with them. I flirt with them. I brush past them. I brush my breast past them. She goes, Toya, I have to get my kicks. That's what my friend says. And I love her honesty. But she goes, Toya, I'm footloose and fancy free. And she goes, until I meet that one person that makes me feel like I don't want to be dating, I'm going to continue to date. She's been dating for 2.5 years and she's living her best life. But can you see what I'm saying about like what your intention is going into dating? But when you're starting having to have conversations about who pays for what, no, your broke ass needs to not be dating. You know what you need to be doing? Just go on TikTok and just stay on TikTok. Just watch TikTok, entertain yourself. Read a fucking book. Do something, but stop wasting people's time. Because what you do is when you waste people's time, you then leave a bad and sour experience for somebody who then has to kind of come out of that bad experience to encourage themselves to go back in the dating scene again. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, that's that. Can we talk about Risky Rishi, as I used to call him? I still call him that. So Rishi Sunak is the Chancellor of the Exchequer here in the UK, and he would basically be like second in command to Boris Johnson, who's the Prime Minister, right? That's how I view it. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And basically, him and his wife has been dragged through the media because apparently Risky Rishi, as I like to call him, had like he didn't effectively declare certain things. So there has, as a minister, there's certain things you have to declare, like financial assets and things like that, and he insists that he follows the rules. However, it's come to light that, you know, it's a bit questionable, allegedly. Also as well, his wife has found to have like non-domicile status, which means that she doesn't consider the UK as her home, and in fact her tax status is as she is a citizen of India, meaning that she pays tax in India for a majority of her income, and any income in the UK, the assumption is that she'd pay the tax. But if she has a non-dom status, that means that she doesn't reside here in the UK and her home is India, but she lives here, so it doesn't make any sense. Where are you paying your taxes, babe? Because if you're paying them in India, they're not done at the same rate as your husband is making them here in the UK. And this is the problem. He is the Chancellor of the Exchequer, and the cost of living has gone up, the cost of fuel, everything has gone up. In fact, national insurance, which we are taxed at source, has gone up as well. So his wife, who has non-dom status and is a citizen of India, she's then not feeling the effects of the decisions her husband is making. And then obviously, you know, Rishi Sunak, apparently he was a green card holder while in his capacity as the Chancellor of the Exchequer. And the whole idea was that if you are a minister, you're Chancellor of the Exchequer, you can't be holding another citizenship. You can't be holding a green card, you have to be a British citizen. So it is alleged that there is a breach of ministerial code, and that is in fact also apparently, allegedly, what the Labour Party is alleging, that Rishi has basically breached ministerial code. There is now going to be an independent review of the Chancellor of the Exchequer and his declarations of financial interest. And basically he said he basically moved his family out of you know, not number 10, but is it number 11 he lives? So he's moved his family out, and he said no, he hasn't moved out because of all this stuff. He's moved out basically because he wants to be closer to his child's secondary school. It's all too convenient, really. But that's what's going on, and I feel like, in my opinion, this is how I feel. This is the Chancellor of the Exchequer who holds the purse strings of the UK, yeah? And he's basically increased taxes. He's made it as so difficult to live, yeah? Everything has gone up. The price of petrol. My car for half a tank used to be £30, 35 if at a stretch. It cost me almost £45 for half a tank of petrol, and I think my engine's at 1.2, or is it 1.4? I think my engine size, is 1.4. So the cost of living is mad. Energy prices are absolutely diabolical, and on top of that, his wife has non-dom status, and the implication is that if she's non-domicile and she's basically a citizen of India living in the UK, clearly her taxes are going to be paid in India. So she's not feeling the pinch of the decisions her husband is making. It's us, the citizens of the UK, that are having to live under this oppression of taxes and high cost of living. And it's mad. It's actually crazy. And then obviously, as the Chancellor of the Exchequer, you can't, you know, there's certain jobs as well. For example, if you wanted to work for MI5, you can't have two passports. So, for example, I've got dual nationality. I was born here in the UK. I've got a British passport, and I also have a Nigerian passport because my parents are Nigerian. If I decided I wanted to work for MI5, do you know that I have to renounce my Nigerian passport? And it's effectively the same thing. Like, if you're going to be the Chancellor of the Exchequer, you cannot be holding a US green card, because it speaks to impartiality. It speaks to just the ministerial rules of how ministers and what ministers are allowed to do and not do, and what they declare. So my question is, if he held a green card whilst in his capacity of the Chancellor of the Exchequer, did he declare it? If they're able to prove that he had a green card at the time, and he didn't declare it, it's a breach of the ministerial code, and he could effectively lose his job. But I'm almost certain that Boris Johnson probably won't ask for his resignation. I mean, Dominic Cummings, during the lockdown when he wasn't allowed to go anywhere, decided to test his tyres and broke, allegedly, broke COVID rules. But Boris Johnson forgave it. Matt Hancock, the slithering hands of Jericho, was caught on camera breaching COVID rules and having an affair on his wife. I say allegedly, but is it really alleged? We saw the video. And Boris Johnson said it's a private matter and therefore he doesn't expect to accept, he doesn't expect to kind of ask Matt Hancock to resign. So we know already that Boris Johnson is not the type of Prime Minister that will ask for the resignations of people within his cabinet who bring his cabinet and the rules of the ministerial code into disrepute. And to be fair, Boris Johnson is having garden parties, allegedly, and all this stuff that he's doing. And I just think the whole Tory party is a farce, to be honest. It's one thing after another with them. If it's not Matt Hancock in his slithering hands of Jericho, we've got Risky Rishi allegedly having a green card. His wife is non-dom, is an Indian citizen living in the UK with the benefits of not necessarily having to pay certain tax, allegedly. It's just bullshit, it's just crazy. And I think that the irony that one would be in that situation and be the Chancellor of the Exchequer, and he's basically saying, oh, it's my wife has got nothing to do with da-da-da. Your wife has everything to do with it, because we're the one paying taxes here, we're the one paying stupid money at the petrol pump, we are the ones who are seeing NI going up, but a lot of people's salaries are not equating to that going up. And it's just, it's terrible. And I don't know how people are going to survive. Do you know the average income, a yearly take home for people, this is obviously before tax, is 25,000 a year. 25,000 a year is the average income. So the take home on 25 grand a year, let's just say someone's got student loans and stuff, I think that's less than 1.5 a month. By the time someone pays their bills, their rent, or even their mortgage, or whatever it is they pay for, like, there is not a lot of money left. I just don't know how people are going to cope, or how people are coping. And we're entering the summer months. How is this going to work in winter when everybody puts their heating up because it's bloody cold here? And we've got the rising energy bills that are set to rise again later on in the year. It's just very mad. So you can see that it's just not fair that the Chancellor of Exchequer is allegedly, his wife is allegedly non-dom status because it's for the benefit of tax. And then you've got him kind of not following his own rules. And I mean, are we surprised? No, not really. But my question remains, where is Dominic Cummings? Because our resident WikiLeaks, all this stuff is coming out and it's just a bit wild. And I say this, and knowing full well Dominic is probably not involved, right? I'm just, my humour. But you know what I will say? I'm suspicious. And follow me here. Everyone's saying, oh, somebody's trying to drag Rishi Sunak's name in the mud, and it's so disrespectful because they had basically propped him up to be the next Prime Minister. Like, if you go to anyone and say, who do you think the next Prime Minister is going to be? Rishi Sunak's name is in the mix, right? And for all intents and purposes, I think he would have been. But this is a bloody smear campaign. I'm sorry. It's literally come left field, and it's just a bit wild, especially when we're talking about the rising cost of living, and people are looking for a face to blame. So Rishi Sunak is that. And I don't now see, after this smear campaign, whether rightly or wrongly, that anybody will now vote for him to be the next Prime Minister, because the way they see it is he is the face of the poverty people are experiencing because of taxes and the rising cost of living, that based on the decisions that he's made, right? But this is my theory. This is what I think. I don't actually think it's Dominic Cummings or the Labour Party or anyone doing a smear campaign. I think it's the Tory party. I think Boris Johnson is involved, allegedly, in my mind. This is my personal opinion. I think Boris, because I think Boris will stop at nothing to hold on to being Prime Minister. I don't know if he can run again. I'm not really too sure. I have to do my research there. But the point is, that Boris Johnson's not even a cat with 9 lives. Boris Johnson is just somebody who, his white privilege has really privileged him, because a black man could never do half the stuff that Boris Johnson has done and still retain their position as Prime Minister. No, it's impossible. But I think the Tory party is involved because I think that there are hard Boris Johnson supporters who would rather do anything to protect Boris, even if it meant getting rid of Rishi Sunak, so that people are not distracted in thinking that he could replace Boris Johnson, because I think that there are more scandals to come, and I think there are certain people that know that that Boris Johnson is one scandal away from resigning or a vote of no confidence. Because to be honest, with them parties that they had breaking COVID rules, Boris by rights should have had the vote of no confidence and be forced to leave. And I think where he's survived is him now realising that he's survived by the skin of his teeth. And in fact, if he had a scandal like that again, he would lose his job. And it'd be easy for him to lose his job if there is somebody prime and prepped and ready to take over, like Rishi Sunak. Get rid of Rishi Sunak. It's even harder now to get rid of Boris, because who would actually replace Boris Johnson? Who in the Tory party? Who? Michael Gove? Jesus Christ. If it's Michael Gove, I'm emigrating. My husband's Kenyan. I'll go Kenya. I can't, because I can't deal with Michael Gove. I just can't take him seriously. I just don't know what's going on with him. I'd rather Boris Johnson over Michael Gove, and that is bottom barrel, I'll tell you that much. Anyway, enough about all that politics stuff. I thought I'd just talk about it because I know a lot of people don't really understand what's going on and stuff. But I hope I've given context. I'm not into politics, but I am into politics in a way, because it's just so interesting to see how white privilege is from a leadership of the country perspective, and it trickles down into society, and we see in the world of work and how managers and white dominated spaces operate. So that's my interest there. The good person syndrome. Everybody wants to be the good person. Toya, how can you say everybody? That's a very general statement. Yeah. A lot of us went into the world of work thinking that it was a lot of what we saw on TV, you know, like on EastEnders, Coronation Street. We had a very false image of what the world of work was. But something that was reinforced by our parents is the subservient, oh, we should be grateful to have a job. The good person syndrome, in my opinion, comes from the need for people to hold on to their jobs by being too good. They feel as though if they're too good, like too good people are also arse lickers. They lick a lot of bum cracks, because being too good is effectively almost being the pet, like the office pet. Nothing is too much. Nothing is too difficult. You know, you will risk life and limb for this job, but when it's time to make someone redundant, your name will be on that list. The too good syndrome, where you think that you have to be perfect in order to hold your job. You know, I used to think in my younger years that the only way to pass my probation was to be perfect, or be as close to perfect as possible. Until I realised it has nothing to do with perfection. It has nothing to do with never making a mistake or being too good. But it has everything to do with understanding the environment you work in, and almost being manipulative in how you navigate, especially during your probation period. Because when I was growing up, people would always remind you that you was on probation, almost to like intimidate you, that they had the power to basically pass you or reject you. And that made me feel as though I was not good enough. So I was always looking to be good enough. The good person syndrome. I'll never forget the time when one of my brothers had started quite newly to the world of work. And there was one time he came home and he said to me that how his boss sent him like an email, and there's a few people in the office that sent him an email, like separate emails. So as soon as he got them, he responded and actioned them straight away. So my brother had been there for what, 2 months? Two and a half months. And the day he'd come home and said this to me, I couldn't understand why, like he was saying, like it was the way he was like, oh, you know, and I responded straight away. So I was like, okay, I didn't understand where the conversation was going. And he says, well, the other day, my boss asked to have a meeting with me, a one-to-one. So I went to her office, had a one-to-one. He goes, she basically said that I'm doing really well at the job, but she thinks that I respond to emails too quickly. He goes, I don't really understand. He goes, if somebody sends me an email and I'm able to do what they've asked in the email, what's the problem? Why can't I do it? He goes, she said I'm doing it too quickly, and then it's making it look like I don't have enough work to do because I'm responding straight away and actioning it straight away. So I remember saying to my brother, but do you space out your work? So for example, if you get 10 emails in one day, do you respond to each one of them and action it on the day? And he said, yeah. And I just remember thinking that's not what I do. And I tried to advise my brother that maybe he should take it as constructive criticism, in that he should just take more of his time before he kind of, goes back to the people that's emailed him, and he maybe thinks a bit about like responding maybe a day or two before like trying, and obviously I was still very naive to the world of work, but I just knew that when someone sends you an email, you can wait 24 hours. Like I was very conscious of that. My brother wasn't. My brother's quite a conscientious person as well. Like, he's very organised, my brother, and that's what makes my brother amazing at what he does for a living. Like, and he's got a wicked job and he's in a wicked industry. So it makes sense, like it suits his personality. But obviously, when you're new in the world of work, no one ever teaches you kind of like the elementary side of the world of work. Like, that theoretical side of, it's the theory that some people find you and your capability and the fact that you're able to turn around things quite quickly quite intimidating, and it for some people it comes across like you're showing off, and or that you don't have enough work to do, hence why you're coming back so quickly. Now, in my maturity, in my learning, in my wisdom, if I was to go back in time to advise my brother, I would say to him, well, there is truth in what she's saying. You have to be strategic in how you navigate the world of work and understand that. Just because someone sends you an email at 12 does not mean you have to get back to them at 12:06. It doesn't work like that. You can wait a few hours, you can wait 24 hours, or you can acknowledge the person's email and say you'll come back to them, and space out the work. I feel like, especially when you come from education, you're guided, you're mollycoddled, you're encouraged and pushed to do certain things, and you've got deadlines. At work you have deadlines, but also you have non-deadline required work, and that requires you to manage your workload in such a way that it looks like you're busy even if you're not, and it also looks like you're taking your time and going through everything so that you are producing quality work. There is a theory to it, there is a knack to it. I'm going to give you an example. So where I'm consulting at the moment, so I've been on that project there has been a project I have been overseeing, and they have no contract management, they don't even understand contract management whatsoever, but the project sponsor understands contract management really well. And I now know that she was burnt during auditing. There was like an audit that happened a few years ago, and she was burnt quite badly because the contract management weren't done properly. So when she wanted a consultant to come in, she was very specific on the specialism, right? So I've just done project close, but they still need me around because they're now winding down, but they're preparing for audit. So, I've been there from the beginning. I've managed all the contract management, I negotiated the contract, I've done all of that stuff, right? So now we're at project close, and we're winding down and stuff, but we're doing the audit stuff. We're almost working backwards just to make sure everything's in order. It's really quiet, on my side. It's very quiet because now they've gone into BAU, and the project outcome is what they're working on now as part of their BAU. I've done my project close, I've done my learning lessons, I've done all my filing, I've done a PowerPoint presentation so people understand how contract management has been used on this particular project. I have done my justification paper on certain decisions that I made. I've done everything. Now, when people send me emails, so they might send like speculative emails, right? Because there's other things that happen within this organisation, and they've heard such good things about the project, so sometimes I come and pick my brain. So they'll send me an email, Toy, are you available later? Queens, of course I'm available later. But I'll say to them, oh, unfortunately, it'll be like Monday. I'll be like, unfortunately, I'm not available until Wednesday afternoon. I'm really busy. I'll write it there. I'm not really busy. But sometimes you've got to give the illusion. If I tell them, oh, I can do it in 10 minutes, they'll be thinking, oh, okay. Oh, yeah, I put in a meeting request for Toya. I wanted to see if she was available. And she came back to me within 10 minutes. She told me she was available to speak to me in 10 minutes. They're paying me a lot of money to not be available in 10 minutes. Do you understand? And even if they weren't paying me a lot of money, I still won't be available in 10 minutes. Do you know why? Because part of navigating the world of work is also the illusion of certain things. You know, the illusion that one is busier than they are. And also there's a respect thing that comes, oh, you know, we have to value Toya's time because she is busy. Do you understand what I'm saying? The illusion I'm talking about is this. Navigating the world of work requires you to do it in such a way that's strategic. So the strategic element I'm talking about in this regard is not always being available to people. You know, when you want people to put respect on your time, you have to also put respect on your time too. I'm not always available. And even if I am available, I'm not always available to you. You need to value my time. So that when I do have a meeting with you, not only do you value what I bring to the table and what we discuss or what you want to extrapolate from me, you'll understand, okay, you know what, that's why she's here doing this role. Do you understand? The good person syndrome it's born from a place of imposter syndrome. I'm sorry, they're acting into the same tree. Because that imposter syndrome is, am I deserving? Why am I here? Am I deserving? Am I deserving? The good person syndrome is, am I deserving? I don't know if I'm deserving, but I'm going to be really, 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 really good. So they think I deserve this. So they know I deserve this. It's fruit of the same tree. The problem with the good person syndrome is you don't allow yourself to be anything other than good. And when you create that illusion for people, when you are below what they consider good because you've given them the definition of good, you then become bad automatically. There's no grey. So if you're listening to this episode and this is resonating with you, there are 2 episodes that I also want you to listen to, previous episodes. And one is called The Power of No. And Apple Podcast tells me that's episode 84. And another episode is called My Mistake. And again, Apple Podcast tells me that's episode 70. So that's The Power of No. And then the other episode is My Mistake. Those 2 episodes need to be listened to in conjunction with this episode because it's born from the same tree. Does that make sense? Cool. There was a meeting I had about 2 weeks ago now, and there was another team, they're looking to do a certain project, and they wanted to know the lessons learned from my project, from the project that I have been overseeing from a contract management perspective, whilst consulting here. And I ended up having a meeting with them. She put in some time for Wednesday and I moved it to Friday. I had nothing to do. I just moved it to Friday just to let her know, you can't just come and put it in. You need to ask me if I'm available. Hello. And even when I went back to her, I said, I'm so sorry, I need to move this to Friday. You know, I'm doing project close, so there's a lot going on and I need to make sure XYZ's done. I'm in the middle of putting together a presentation for the board. I wrote it there, I don't care. Babes, my presentation for the board was done a few days ago. Do you understand? But me, I want to review taking. So I had the meeting with the woman, and then she was like firing all these questions at me. It was fine, I didn't mind. I like it as well because I love what I do for a living. So I don't mind people asking certain questions. Why did I make certain decisions? Then she said to me, oh, Toy, you know what would be really useful? I said, what? She goes, oh, could you do a lessons learned and submit that to me? Submit it to you? Who the fuck are you, bitch? No, I'm joking. But I did think, like, you've come to me to pick my brain and now you're setting work for me. Now, between you and I would have to do a lessons learned anyway as part of Project Close of what I do. Not that the company have asked me to do it, but that's kind of what I would do anyway. And I'd already drafted one. So it kind of worked. But for me, it felt like, you see, the good person syndrome, if this was me a few years ago, I would do the learning lessons, the lessons learned that day. So I said to her, listen, I'm in the middle of Project Close. So your request is not necessarily a priority, but I can see how it would benefit my project. So can I come back to you? And she went quiet. And she was like, you know what, I know how busy you are, of course you can come back to me, just let me know if you have capacity. I like that word. Do you have capacity? Yes, because my capacity has reached epicenter of capacity. I'm at the top level of the capacity. Yeah. So I've learned also to manage expectation. So I said I'd come back to her. Now obviously as part of my project close, I've done the learning lesson. So what I did is I made it like, so I think it was end of last week, I said, please find attached the pack for the board, and on slide whatever, here's the lessons learned that I think you'll be interested in. Do you know, this woman came back to me an hour later. She says, Toya, what do we need to do to get you on our project? And she wrote on IM, and I responded, I said, you guys can't afford me, laugh out loud. This woman's been harassing me to come and work on their project. They want to extend me. And I was like, I don't know, I'm not sure, I'll let you know. You see, the art of understanding how to navigate certain spaces will have you come out of this good person syndrome. You need to be a good person to yourself in the world of work. Yeah, you need to be a professional person to everybody else. And the word professional is almost sometimes seen as quite a dirty word. It's quite stiff. I remember I had a public speaking event and I used the word professional, and someone on the panel tried to correct me, and I said, no, the word professional has been made into a dirty, stiff word. The word professional means understanding that your environment is no longer informal. You're in a formal environment. The word professional means formal environment. So your behaviour and manner has to change to reflect that. That's what professional means. So for me, the good person syndrome is understanding the balance between delivering and being professional. Delivering, being professional, managing people's expectations. You see, if you're on the crusade of the good person syndrome, you're not managing expectation very well, because you're not giving yourself breathing room to not always be the good person. And it doesn't mean that you become the bad person, it just means you become human. The need to dehumanize ourselves to be the good person is a problem, because then what you're doing is sowing a seed of being uncomfortable when you're not always perceived as the good person that you're trying to project. People will tell you, anyone will tell you, if you work with me, or you're working around me, or you're working in a project around me, I am just me. I'm not a good person, that good person syndrome. No. What people will say is Toya is direct, straight to the point, professional, and she delivers. They will tell you those things. And they will always be taken the right way, straight to the point. If you have an issue, Toya will diagnose it. She'll give you a proposed solution. I'm honest. I'm not really too sure that this would work. Let me look into it. I'm managing your expectations. I will always deliver. Because I'm a subject matter expert and I've taken the time to understand my subject matter. The problem people have is they use the word subject matter expert, but you haven't taken the time to understand the subject matter that you're trying to be an expert in. And it's also understanding you're not going to know everything, and you're not going to be good at everything. But the core things about your subject area needs to be your strength. So I'll give you an example. As a senior commercial contracts manager or senior commercial contract consultant, sometimes we have to deal with the financials of a contract, and the financials could be spend against budget. Something as simple as that, I'm cool. But when you start telling me about projected, I'm not good at those things, you know. And I say, I'm not really good at these things. But then I'll find somebody who I work around who is good at those things, and I'll leverage that and get them to either teach me or deliver that for me. Because I'm not perfect. And I used to feel as though part of being the good person syndrome needed me to be perfect, until I realised that society does not and will not ever view black women as being perfect. And whilst that is unfair, because they seek to make non-black people, specifically white people, perfect. In comparison, it's almost like society's telling us that we'll never measure up. That's where it becomes a problem, right? That comparison. But what I've realised is, and I think I've realised it through the course of my career, is that if you're really good at what you do, there has to be a balance of the things you're not so good at. But what you're really good at will always outweigh what you're not so good at, if that makes sense. And you've got to remember, this is all on the backdrop of me being dyslexic, that no one knows at work, because I'm not willing to give you that as a stick to beat me in my profession, especially when I'm working with white male chauvinist pigs. You're not going to know that about me. So for me, there is an enhanced view of what being a subject matter expert is, because I have to also confront the challenges that my dyslexia poses to me. And I've mastered my dyslexia, but there are times when my dyslexia runs a bit wild. So for me, I've always seen it as I could never be the good person. I can never be the good person for too long, because the good person syndrome will wear off with me after a while. Especially when I was younger, and I used to make loads of mistakes because I never used to take my time, because I was pursuing of being the good person, being perfect. And what would happen is I would reply to emails straight away. I wouldn't read my emails before I send it. I wouldn't have full stops and commas where they need to be. I'd have spelling errors. And whilst you can have, like, don't get me wrong, sometimes you have spelling errors, but mine was like littered with spelling errors. And I would always get pulled up on it when I was a bit younger. And I think part of it is being young, being impatient and all that. But it then contradicted this good person syndrome that I had, right? This being good and being perfect. There was a direct contradiction because I was making all these mistakes. And I just remember there was this one job I had, and the line manager just said, Toya, just take your time. Just take your time. And I felt like I was always in a race with myself. I was always in a race to be perfect, because I saw people my own age doing really well or being what I perceived was perfect. So I felt like I had to put that pressure on myself to find that perfection that never existed. You see, I didn't understand that the world of work as it was, and how black women are perceived in the world of work is we are moving targets. I've said this to you guys before. But I didn't understand the strength in myself. And I think a lot of people that possess the good person syndrome have low self-esteem, or traits of low self-esteem. Because people who stand firm in who they are understand that being good doesn't mean you're the best. Being good doesn't mean you're the best. I think employers encourage the good person syndrome, and they weaponize it by pitting staff off against each other, and it harbours and breeds discord. And I think it should never be encouraged to be the quote unquote good person, because somebody then has to be the bad. Do you understand? Like, it's toxic in its pursuit. It's toxic. I feel as though, as black women in the world of work, there are always going to be situations that challenge our positions, because they haven't been created for the benefit of us. And I feel as though what we need to do is be clear on, your objectives and stuff, and I've said this before, but you need to be clear on who you are when you are in the world of work. So I have an episode about showing up to work as yourself and advocating for yourself. But who are you trying to be? Especially the first few months of your employment, who are you trying to be? And in as much as you should advocate and show up as yourself, there is a different version of you when you're going through probation versus when you've passed probation. There is a different version, especially if you're serious about, the world of work, or serious about a particular job. When I was a perm, during probation, I was different. I felt like I had to be that good person until I realised and understood how to pass my probation, then I realised it wasn't about being a good person. It was just about being a safe pair of hands. And the good person, the good element came from me kind of working as a team, getting to a point where I knew more than my boss, and then training junior members of staff. And I liked that element of good person. But also, I used to beat myself up for making mistakes, because I think I felt that because I knew that, you know, either I was the only black person or I was the token or whatever the situation was, because I was that, or made to feel like that, I felt like I was pushed into being the good person or being too good. Oh, but Toya does it like that. And you almost feel like, you know, when they start using you as an example or kind of saying these things, it makes you feel like you're on top of the world until you're not. And I hated the control that level of toxicity had over me in the world of work. I hated it. You know, the pursuing of being perfect. When I didn't feel perfect, society told me I wasn't perfect because I wasn't good enough. And yet I'm in a workplace that are trying to make me perfect because I'm good at my job. And I think my mind shifted when I realised that no matter how good I was at my job, no matter how much experience I had, there was always a man that was earning more than me and I was doing more than them. And when I realised that, when that became apparent to me, it made me realise that it's nothing to do with being a good person, like, or being too good at work or trying to be too perfect. It's about sometimes understanding the ruthlessness of the world of work. And obviously now I'm mature enough and I've grown, I've had so many experiences. I understand the dynamics of the world of work. I understand how workplaces deliberately do stuff to pit their staff off against each other, i.e. paying people different rates for no reason, doing the same job, promoting people who don't deserve it just because, and not being transparent about certain things. And when I started to see myself as a business, when I went into contracting, when I worked with certain different companies, when I understood how the world of work operated and I defined my own success, I ridded myself of the good person syndrome. I'm a safe pair of hands, I'm a subject matter expert, I'm good at what I do, but most importantly, I understand the psychology of the world of work. And I think when you start to do that, it becomes easier to navigate the world of work. So a fellow queen sent me a TikTok, and the TikTok, there was a beautiful woman asking, tell me something a workplace has taught you that you didn't know before. And another fellow black queen basically said, it's you can work 110% and you will never get that promotion. I'm paraphrasing here. And she said the reason is because if you're given 110%, managers, organisations know that you're working for validation and therefore they're only going to give you scraps. And this is kind of the essence of this episode, right? The good person syndrome, where you're given 100%, you're working your tooth to the bone, your hairline is receding because you're working so hard. In fact, like, you know, your armpits are smelling of just BO by 4 o'clock because you're working like a dog for scraps. And workplaces, managers know this. And they'll give you, you know what the scraps is? When you work your arse off and you work so hard and you expect a promotion or a pay rise and you don't get it. And this is why I say to you that in the world of work, managers, organisations have very short memories. It's short. Oh, you saved me, you saved my bacon. Oh my God, you got me out of a bind. They forget all those things, but they remember all the things you don't do. When it's time to ask for a promotion, they remember that their hands are tied. Your hands are not tied when you're using your hands to whip me to work like a dog. That's not when your hands were tied. Your hands are tied now because I'm asking you to give me the fruits of my labour. And you know, they say, oh, work smart, not hard. It's kind of that concept, because the good person thinks, I'm going to give it 110%, I'm going to work. And you think that the workplace is fairness and balance, and it's not, you know. It's smartness, it's strategic, it's being very cognizant of the environment you're working around. And it's also about being loyal to yourself. In the world of work, whether you're a perm, part-time, full-time, fixed-term contractor, whatever your status is, you need to be loyal to yourself. And I keep saying this, loyal to your objectives, what you're learning, loyal to the coin. I'm not loyal to an organization. I used to be, you know, come rain or shine, because I felt like I was a part of something. Until you need to rely on what you're a part of and they let you down, then you realize actually this is just a job. And this is why I say to people, I love my career. I'm shameless when I say you can't shame me for loving my career. You cannot, because I found something that I'm good at. I became a subject matter expert, and I have worked for some of the biggest organizations in this country, and I am proud of it. I command and demand a certain amount of money. But that is because I realized that the only loyalty I could give was to myself. When you have been burnt in an organization that you've been so loyal to, you can't even get time off without them criticizing or making you feel as though you've requested the worst thing in the world. When it comes to bonuses, suddenly they're remembering that bonuses are discretionary, but they're not remembering that you're using your discretion to work late, work your finger to the bone, work weekends. No. You know, I've shared with you guys that last year, I said to you, the last 2 years, I've probably worked the hardest I've ever done in my whole career. But I'm going to say this to you, the project that I recently came off, that was, you know, heavily a lot, you know, over the last year of this podcast, I've got to be honest with you, I learned a lot, you know. I learned so much there. I worked really, really hard, but there was balance. Because you've got to remember, I was building a house at the same time. So there were times when I had to be off, and they had to respect it. I set the boundary. I set certain boundaries. If I'm off, you can't ring me when I'm off, you know. And my boss would warn everyone, don't ring Toya. I didn't mind working late because I got paid extra for it. So I always felt like it was quite transactional for me. So it wasn't like I was working late to be recognised. Nah. The recognition came as a byproduct. I was getting paid my day rate on the weekends. And there was a point where they needed me to work certain weekends. I'm like, right, you're paying me my day rate and a half. You know, I could command that. So for me, in that respect, it worked for me. Do you understand? But the problem I have is when people burn the midnight oil, work themselves to the bone in the hope that they just get that recognition. I need an immediate transaction. I'm sorry. I'm not doing this whole recognize, because I don't need the validation. I don't need it. And I think when I was a perm, I wish I recognised that the only validation I needed is that I was a safe pair of hands and I was good at my job. I realised that towards the end of being a permie, if that makes sense. When I'd say 2 years before I left perm to go contracting is when I realised it. And to be fair, that's when I think when my mindset shifted, I noticed that I was getting a bit more respect at work. I noticed that I was leaving more of an impact at work, because again, you're setting those boundaries, right? You're not giving 110%, because sometimes what people don't realise is sometimes when you work late, it can also look like you don't manage your time very well. And I don't think people realise that you have to find balance in all that you do. There can't be an extreme, and you have to understand what you're getting out of something. Recognition is great, yeah? But if you have to sacrifice your well-being for that recognition, it don't make sense. This is why I keep telling you guys about that feedback folder that somebody tried to rip off and call it a praise and worship folder. Girl, don't do it. Just don't do it. Anyway, Toy, leave that alone. Anyway, but what I'm trying to say is the feedback folder, and I was trying to say this before and I got distracted, but the feedback folder is so important because it is a historical audit trail of your progress. Some of you have to put together almost like a business justification case as to the reason why you should get a bonus. Your business justification should be your feedback folder. Do you understand? I know that for me, the feedback folder was my safety net. Even if it was just a customer saying, Toy, thank you so much for the work you've done. Or even if it was a stakeholder saying, Toy, this was excellent work, I'd put it in my feedback folder. I would. People would think, oh, it's the most minor thing. But no, it's not. It's the most polarized thing, because when you're doing Madam Too Good or Mr. Too Good, and you're getting that recognition in that moment, it's easy to forget about it. It's like learning a new skill and not updating your CV regularly. You forget to put those things on there, and people forget. Especially when it comes to black women. I feel like people forget really quickly. And they forget the greatness we possess when we're executing our jobs. They forget it. But when you make a mistake, a year on, they'll still remember that mistake and use it as an example in a team building exercise. You have to get to a point of understanding how you move in the world of work. And until you get to a point of understanding that you can't move like your fellow Sarahs, Carolines and Karens, you can't move like them. Because as black women, the world of work is very different in our lens. So our lens has to be laser sharp about how we navigate the world of work. You have to have your feedback folder. If you're joining a new company and they're not giving you work, you email and say, just to let you know I'm available for work and da-da-da. Don't harass them. If they don't want to give you listen, I've worked in a place before. For a month, they gave me nothing to do. And in that month, I did a couple of courses online, using their internet, doing a couple of courses, waiting for them to give me work. And I remember after the second or third week, I emailed the manager and said, it would be great to set some examples between now and the end of my probation. And if you saw the response, they were like shocked. Oh my God. Because sometimes some organisations try to use probation to intimidate you. You can't do that with me. It's not when I'm taking control of this probation by setting the objectives and we hold ourselves accountable every week or every month or every 2 weeks or bi-weekly, 2 weeks. No. And I remember the manager coming back to me and said, oh my God, I almost forgot you was on the team. How can you forget I was on the team? You interviewed me. I've been asking you for work. You didn't give it to me. But I never allowed that to be a wasted opportunity. I was doing courses. And for me, when I'm on my probation, I was still looking for jobs because it's not a foregone conclusion you're going to pass your probation. And here I know you'll say, Toy, where's the probation masterclass? And it is coming. You just need to be patient. I've just moved house. It's coming. It's being edited. And there's a couple of things I need to re-record as well. But it's coming. And I'm going to give you the templates. But this is the issue I have. I feel like when it comes to understanding how to move in the world of work, I feel like some people are not willing to take the risk of understanding that until you make a change, you're not going to see a difference. It begins and ends with you. If you want to be the good person, you ain't going to be that for a long time. So just be the professional person. The good person syndrome is toxic. And you need to then own it. Like own what the good person syndrome is. Define what a good person is. A good person isn't always saying, right, I'll work through my lunch. That's not always a good person. I get it. Sometimes you've got some projects you have to work a bit late. But where's the transaction? What are you getting out of it? How is your sacrifice entering your feedback folder? That's the question. How is it entering your feedback folder? The good person syndrome. Like I said, you need to listen to this episode in conjunction with The Power of No, which is episode 84, and My Mistake, which is episode 70. I hope this episode reaches somebody that needs it. I hope that it resonates with you, and I hope it's opened up your mind to understand the toxicity of the good person syndrome, but how to own it and how to get in front of it, and also how to also understand how the good person syndrome has affected you or us in our careers. There are times, maybe even now, where you're doing Madame Too Good or Mr. Too Good, and you have to understand how to manage that, because that could be quite burdensome. That's not a word, Toya. That could be quite a burden. Come and see grammatical grammar. I feel like sometimes at work we carry a lot of burdens, and some of the ones that we place on ourselves. How do you leave a good impression without kind of igniting the good person syndrome? Well, leaving a good impression is about how people feel when they interact with you, what impression you give. And it's weird, right? Because I feel like sometimes being a consultant can be quite lonely. You could be like the only consultant on a project, right? Or in a team. And it can be lonely in that, there's, you're quite isolated in that sense, right? Especially if you're working with perm people. It's like sometimes for some organisations it's us and them. But this is what I say to myself. The impression I'm always going to give is going to be somebody who has a safe pair of hands. But also the impression is, don't get too comfortable with me. I want to come across, everyone wants to come across like they're a good person. But good person in the world of work akins to perfect. You need to be the authority in what you do, irrespective of what you do. And you need to find the balance. And I feel like some people overlook the need to find balance and would rather be the definition, the toxic definition of the good person. And that in itself is the burden, if that makes sense. So I'm hoping that you've received this episode, and I hope that it resonates with you. And if you think this episode could benefit someone, please send it to them and tell them to also listen to the 2 previous episodes that I referenced as well. So before I close the episode, I wanted to share with you a case that recently happened. And it's a 39-year-old white woman. She's a female accounts executive, and she took her employer to court. She was working for Gartner Consultancy. They're quite a huge consultancy. You know what? I do get asked why I haven't joined a consultancy firm, and I just am not interested. But I do find some consultancy firms quite toxic. Like, you hear stuff, right? You know, the industry, my industry is small, so we kind of talk. So I wasn't surprised to read about this case. I was surprised about the consultancy, but I wasn't, you know, it's not surprising that a woman would take an organisation, an employer to court, and the heads of claim were bullying, victimisation and less favourable treatment as a result of making a complaint about how she was being treated. So effectively she sued Gartner Consultancy because she was often referred to also as a good girl in the office, and she was subjected to sexual harassment. The tribunal concluded in her favour, and they said, they found that, calling somebody a good girl is a sexist language in the workplace. It was quite condescending, quite degrading and humiliating behaviour in which she was subjected to. So there were other things that were happening, but they referenced the good girl as being quite a sexist thing to say. The boss, her boss, mocked her weight and called her fat in photos, that she appeared quite fat in photos. And when she complained, they accused her of flirting back. Yeah? So it's alleged that Gartner Consultancy is quite toxic, male-dominated environment, male-dominated culture, and that this 39-year-old white woman who was the accounts executive there, was subjected to unwanted sexual advances. And an example of that is when she had to go on an overnight business trip, and her boss insisted that he would go on the overnight trip too. And he attempted to touch her and kiss her. When she rebuffed his advances, he apologised, but went straight back to doing what he had done before in terms of kind of the sexist comments, the bullying and the harassment. When she sought to raise a grievance, she was accused of being an oxygen thief. I don't even understand how that would even be a context of, I don't get it, but I'm just telling you guys. Anyway, what I wanted to do is quickly read to you the judgment. And the judge in the case is Judge Tobin, and this is what he said. We are an experienced tribunal, and note that documentary evidence indicating such a discriminatory culture is rare. The harassment started slightly at first with comments particularly about her appearance and her standing, i.e. good girl, which then escalated into inappropriate advances. Language evolves over time. Words and phrases that might once have seemed harmless are now regarded as racial, homophobic, and sexual slurs. Some phrases, whilst not regarded as taboo, are generally regarded as inappropriate in the workplace. Referring to a woman in her late 30s with a school-aged child as a girl is demeaning. We find Miss Fricker was sexually harassed and treated less favourably because of her rejection of the harassment. Ms. Fricker's claims of constructive unfair dismissal also succeeded, though other complaints of sex discrimination and victimisation failed. Compensation will be determined at a later date. I think what is important, and obviously I've just given a brief overview, is that this woman she joined the company in 2017 and she resigned in 2019. So one of her heads of claim was constructive dismissal, and you have to be continuously working at an organisation, I believe, for 2 years. So she because of what she was subjected to, she did use, the internal process by, raising a grievance. But then as a result of the behaviours, and obviously she didn't, win the grievance in the workplace, she had to resign. So we call that constructive dismissal. You constructed you constructed an environment that was untenable for me to continue working here. Therefore, as a result of the unfavourable treatment, the less favourable treatment, bullying, victimisation and sex discrimination to an extent, she had to resign. So when she went to Employment Tribunal, I guarantee you she had evidence. She had a burn folder. Because one of the things that the judge says is, we are an experienced tribunal and note that documentary evidence indicating such a discriminatory culture is rare. So she must have had the evidence. And it is rare. Or shall I say it was rare until people started realising how to document evidence. And that's what I've brought it here to the podcast about the burn folder. So none of you can act like you don't know how to accumulate evidence. You know how to, and you know how to use it, because I have an episode teaching you how to use it and using the example of Dominic Cummings, because he had a burn folder and he continues to use it even now, allegedly. This 39-year-old woman is a white woman as well. So I'm giving context here, right? Because I feel like white privilege, and I feel as though when white people complain of certain things, it's taken a lot more seriously than when black women do. Black women have to go over and above to prove beyond reasonable doubt something has happened, hence the burn folder. Whereas I feel with a white woman, they're seen as more, they're seen as more, the weaponization of white tears. Poor Sally, poor Sarah. Whereas with black women, it's almost seen as though we don't even have the opportunity to be the poor one, if that makes sense. There's, this is really bad. It's almost like we have to go to the extreme of even getting doctors' reports to prove that this has mentally been debilitating in a way a white woman doesn't. The reason I also read this case is because, I think the judge captures it very well. The way in which language has evolved in understanding feminism and femininity, and how words that historically maybe would have been like, swept under the carpet or not seen as serious enough, they are now, faux pas, but worse than faux pas actually. Maybe faux pas is not a good example, but there's certain words that are just discriminatory and derogatory in nature. It's unequivocal. You cannot pretend to not know how words have evolved in this country and how words continue to evolve. Calling somebody who has anyone a good girl, irrespective, the judge talks about calling her a child and knowing that she has a child of school age, and that's demeaning, but it's demeaning to call anybody a good girl. How can a 39-year-old woman be a good girl? It's demeaning. And they would use a male comparator to say you wouldn't call him a good boy, because that would be seen as demeaning. Why would it be any different if you called somebody a good girl? That would be the comparator, and I think that's the comparator that the judge probably used to derive his conclusion. But the point here that I'm making is this case has now set a precedent. It's set a precedent to organisations to understand that words carry weight. And the tribunals, the employment tribunals, are placing weight on those words and the impact of those words, and understanding the evolution and the cultural impact of words as well. So please do yourself a favour and make sure your burn folders are kept up to date. I don't want to be receiving emails with long stories. I want to be, if you're going to send me a dilemma email, have your burn folder on deck. Oh, I had a conversation. No, I didn't follow up with an email. How is somebody supposed to help you? You're going into these meetings, no notebook. Despite the fact that Toya had a stationary collab with Dreams and Purpose and dropped notebooks. That's how important notebooks are, that I'm even putting them in my collection. So you can't say that you didn't have an opportunity to take something in. Take a notebook, bullet points, then follow up with an email. Audit trail. It's irrespective of whether the recipient acknowledges your email. It's the fact that it's sent. Put a read receipt on there. Do you know what? Do you get what I'm trying to say to you? You know, when these cases happen, it's important that I bring them here to the podcast, because I also want you guys to be kept abreast of, you know, the precedents that are being set, what's happening from an employment tribunal perspective, because I think there's going to be a lot more cases to do with kind of bullying, victimisation, and the use of words that are derogatory, and the treatment of less favourable treatment that women are experiencing, we women are experiencing. I think we're going to see a lot more cases like this, and the judge's comments are so important. They're so pertinent, because I think what he has done is he's brought to the forefront the importance of understanding how language is weaponized to demean women. And we know this already, don't we? But to then render a judgment and make this type of, you know, references and statements, and, you know, to give context to the judgment, sets the tone. And organisations need to be careful. I have a lot of heads of organisations, or a lot of senior people of organisations that listen to this podcast, and you better be put on notice. If you've got per members of staff and you place them in a position whereby you make their job untenable because of how you treat and how words are used and weaponized, you will find yourself in the employment tribunal and you will pay. This woman now is going to get a substantial payout from Gartner Consultancy. And now Gartner Consultancy now is on record of this case. So anybody that wants to work for that consultancy, you're aware that they had this case and it was found against them. Now there's two sides to every story. In fact, no, there's three sides. Your side, their side, and the truth. But the point is this. A 39-year-old woman brought a claim to the Employment Tribunal. Her heads of claim were bullying, victimisation, less favourable treatment, constructive dismissal, and I'm sure there was a few others. And while certain things were struck out, certain things were kept in, and there was judgment in her favour. It stinks that she would even have to go through this. It stinks. My fellow black queens, please, please, please keep your ears open, keep your eyes wide, shine your eyes, and start protecting yourself in the world of work. I'm going to draw this episode to a close. I've enjoyed this episode, actually. I enjoy every episode, to be fair, but I enjoy imparting the knowledge and sharing and making sure that I continue to feed into my community. I just love us as black queens. I think we're amazing. I think that we have so many opportunities to not only just be successful, just to understand the psychology of the world of work, so that we are able to be successful, however you define success, financially, from a title position, from a work-life balance position. And this is what I always say, if there is somebody out there, or people out there, or organisations out there that don't know about this episode or this podcast or the platform, please just share. And I know you guys do, because I can see it on the download figures, but I know you guys do. But continue to share, because the more people like us, black queens, who are aware of the platform, the more that we can have conversation and bring things to the forefront, the more that us as black women know how to navigate the world of work, because it's a continuous education. And whilst you guys still want it, every Tuesday I'm going to be here. Whilst you guys still want it, I'm always going to continue to develop the Toy Talks platform. So yeah, I'm going to leave it there, and I'm going to say to you, if you want to follow me on social media, I've got my personal Instagram page, which is Toya_Washington. Of course, the Toy Talks podcast has its own Instagram page, which is Toya_Talks. We are also on TikTok, Toya_Washington. Of course, Snapchat, the birthplace of Toya Talks, Toya Washington, which is all one word. You can also find me on Twitter, Toya_W with the hashtag Toya Talks or Toy Talks podcast. And also as well, for those of you who do not know, I have my own YouTube channel, which I love doing. It's all retrospective vlogs, things that have happened, and obviously you guys are seeing it now, and you know the progress and evolution of certain things. So go ahead and have a watch. It's called At Home with Toya. The links are in the show notes that are accompanying this podcast episode. I will also be doing some more TikToks, sort of like quick fire tips about the world of work. So make sure you go on TikTok, Toya_Washington, and have a look at the stuff that I have there already and the stuff that is to come. Masterclasses coming and loading. And of course, we have a remote masterclass coming and loading as well. Again, I just appreciate your patience. You guys know that I put out quality material, so everything that takes its time is worth the wait. If you're working for an organization that is looking to improve its understanding on how us as Black women navigate the world of work, talking about macro aggressions, talk about bullying, victimization, understanding the differences with the word that is very toxic but BAME, make sure you send them my website, toytalks.com, and you are able to book me. If you send an email into hello@toytalks.com, it will go across to my assistant, and she will be able to give my rate card. I do public speaking events. I've done several. I've done stuff for the Arts Council, Kingston Students Union University. I've also done Sega as well. I've done like quite a lot of stuff behind the scenes, some of the stuff that never make it actually onto the podcast, but I am very well versed in public speaking, so you can book me through there. If you have a work related dilemma, you guys know, keep it straight to the point, keep it concise, let me know what outcome you are seeking, and we will do our best here on the Toy Talks podcast to address it. Email hello@toytalks.com with your dilemma title in the subject box. So I want to thank you all for listening. Thank you for continuing to follow the journey that is the Toy Talks podcast. Thank you for all the new listeners. Please acquaint yourself to the previous episodes. Make sure you share the podcast and the episodes. If you are listening on Spotify, please rate this podcast. It helps me a lot. If you're listening to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, make sure you rate and review. I read all of them. Again, it helps the podcast a lot. And whatever platform you're listening to the Toy Talks podcast on, if you're able to rate and review, please do so. I would be very, very grateful. So yeah, I think that we have come to an end. As much as I know you guys want us to continue, we will continue every Tuesday and next Tuesday as well. I'm off to watch, I took a car out in my name for him. It's a, I don't know if you guys watch Trend Central, and they have this series called Full Disclosure, and it has Lani Good and Esther on there. So I'm going to be watching that. Maybe I'll do a review next week on it. I don't know, let's see what the episode is saying. But make sure you go and have a look. Trend Central on YouTube. They have an episode from a series called Full Disclosure. I took a car out in my name for him. Anyway, guys, that's enough from me. See you all next week. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for joining. Make sure you follow me on my social media handles, and I'll see you again next week. My name is Toya Washington, and you have been listening to the Toy Talks podcast.